What's up, and welcome to the 22 Booker podcast where art and life intersect. I just made that up right then. I really don't know if this is where that happens, guys, but until I have a better tag, I think I'm gonna go with that. So, we are on episode 3, and today we are joined by none other than Mr. John Conway, who happens to be an editor extraordinaire and the editor of our short film Morning. John, thanks for coming, man.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys about everything, life itself.
Can you explain to us where life and art intersect so that we can make good on my promise?
Where did life and art intersect? I would say everywhere in a lot of ways. It's just like I think art is like one of the most fundamentally important things for understanding life and like making sense of everything. And it allows us to, be empathetic with one another and learn more about one another.
I respect that you
So yeah.
took that question completely seriously.
I mean, you, I,
Yeah.
I wanted to let him cook.
Yeah.
He's really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think it's like so one of those things that you frequently you start thinking more about as you get deeper and deeper into like creating art. Is you're like, what is the purpose of it? You find out that it's really like a device to create empathy and learn more about one another.
Look, John Conway on the show today, and he's just diving straight in. Ryan, are you ready? Are you
I
ready?
Look,
love it.
I stay ready, man.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. John already teed us up. So what we three have come together to do, along with a team of other people, is bring an amazing story to life that was written by Ryan Lipscomb, and it really is, like you said, John. It is a piece that really showcases where life and art intersect. I mean, I don't. I mean, what's the saying that life imitates art, imitates life? And
Yeah.
I think this story is perfect. It's one of those stories that came from Ryan's own experience. If you haven't listened to episode 1, you got to go back and catch episode 1 so that you can really get the foundation of like what this project is all about, where it originated, how it came to be, and all that stuff. But yeah, in a nutshell, it really is a project where life meets art because it came from
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, and I think in some ways it's like as an artist, like you create things as a form of like therapy for yourself, and like getting things out of your head and putting it on a page or putting it on a screen is a way of like digesting it for your
Yeah.
your
Well,
own
John, take
self.
us back to the beginning as much as you can. Like, where and when did John know that this is what he wanted to do? Like, what? How did this come about? How did you find your space in filmmaking? Like, give us. You don't have to go into super detail, but I kind of want to know the superhero John's origin story.
We can't really see like, but like right off the screen beside me is like a massive DVD and Blu-ray collection, and that's kind of like where I got like really into it. And like, one of my best friends and I have been collecting movies as just like a hobby since I want to say like middle school or even earlier. And when I started getting into a position where I was like, I need to figure out what I want to do with my life, I met a teacher that basically pointed me in the direction of screenwriting. And it was never something I'm from Virginia, and like being from Virginia, like so far away from where the film industry is, you kind of don't see it as like a feasible career field. Um, and she kind of guided me into the world of film. I started learning more about the masters of the craft and kind of got obsessed with it. And it just really pushed me in that direction. It made me realize like how valuable cinema and film is to humanity as a whole, and like the idea of that you can watch things from as early as like the late 1800s to now and see like what life was like in every year since then, or like what human beings thought of themselves. And I think that's fascinating. And it's something that I know that is a deep enough well that I'll probably never get tired of finding new things. So I appreciate that about it. And yeah, that's ultimately how I got into film. And then from there, so once I figured out that I wanted to start doing screenwriting, I applied to all the best film schools. I got into USC, came out to USC, and just kept going. And that's pretty much what it has meant to me. It's not really like a career for me. It's like a lifestyle choice.
You said something interesting about how like you'll never get tired of watching films. It's not, and I was thinking about how the fact that like it's literally like you'll never read every book that was written. Is the same like cinema. You never be able to watch every film because there's always something like new to discover. Like always, where it's like, oh, here's like you could all of a sudden decide I'm going to get into like Japanese cinema. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden now you're going down to like Kurosawa, rabbit hole, or Ozu, rabbit hole. You know what I mean? And it's just like, there's so many things that branches out all these other different scenarios. Like there's such a vast well of art to consume when it comes to like, just like Italian New Wave or like French cinema. You know what I'm saying? Or like, like cinema from the 70s. Like you just so many different movies like haven't discovered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny too because it's like even you saying it, you're touching on the surface of it. It's like there's Czech New Wave, there's German New Wave,
exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Silent.
And even for us, like we're sickos with it, whatever, right? But at the same time, like I'll never be able to watch as much stuff as I'll be able to watch. Like our mutual friend Greg was like, because I hadn't seen Blood Simple, the Coen movie.
Crazy.
Hadn't seen
Blows
it.
my mind.
Right? I've seen many Coen Brothers movies. Had not seen Blood Simple. Right? Just hadn't gotten to it yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Finally watched it over the weekend. Great movie. It's like, what I'm saying? You can discover the old movie was made in like 1984 that movie was made. And it's like, okay.
Sunday.
Movie's made 40 years ago. It's new to me. I'm discovering it.
Yeah, I think that's like kind of it's a really special thing about it. And I will say that like while it is good to like focus specifically on cinema since that's what we're trying to make film. I mean, you can do that with like every art form, which I think is wonderful. Like I think like one of the things all three of us have talked about before is like music, and specifically like when you start getting into music, you realize who influenced those musicians, and then you start listening to those musicians, and then you realize where that influence came from. And it's like that with film too. It's like you find filmmakers now that influence you or that you appreciate, and then you realize that they watch and explore films the same way you do. So you have this like unspoken bond that you don't even know. So it's like kind of a way to connect with people.
A lot of people like Kill Bill, right? Quentin Tarantino. I suggest those people go back and watch Lady Snowblood. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I got both of them.
Or Barry Jenkins, one of my favorite filmmakers, whatever. If you watch Moonlight, which I think is a perfect movie, then okay, go watch like In the Mood for Love. You know what I mean? Which influenced.
Yeah. Oh man, every Wong Kar-wai movie. His 66th birthday was yesterday.
So yeah, I mean, like all these movies are like in conversation with one another, and I think that's a beautiful thing. That's like I think that's why we all enjoy it. Like I actually like John, you talking about like the your extensive like Blu-ray collection, whatever. It's like one of my favorite things that I used to be able to do. If I went over a friend's house, somebody's house, whatever, and like I would look at like first thing I would look at is like what movies they have on their shelf, what DVDs they have on their shelf, whatever. It would tell me so much about them. You know what I mean? Like a window into their personality, whatever, right?
I like thinking of like you walking into my place and be like, man, this guy's got some problems just
like
because
like incredible taste, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, a man of culture, right? You know what I'm saying? So like, that's the thing. Like I am a fan. I know we're in it's 2024 and like, tech companies want us to relinquish all physical media, whatever. But like, I am a fan of physical media. Like,
Yeah,
let's bring back Blu-rays and DVD. I just think it'd be better for the business anyway if we just brought the industry, brought it back. But like I have a record player. I like vinyls. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe I'm an old soul. I don't know, but
I actually, it's funny you say that too, just about like Blu-ray and DVD and uh, I mean vinyl too. Like the presentation. This is something that like I've been talking about a lot recently. It's just like the way films are presented too, and like music is presented too, is like a huge thing too. And like I'm huge into the theatrical experience and just like how it can affect you psychologically in such a different way than watching it at home on a
yeah, the
TV.
people who
Um,
say,
and
I'm sorry, the people who say like, oh, I'd rather just watch movies at home. I don't understand
yeah,
it because like you're missing the experience of sitting in a theater with strangers. It's like the best way to watch a movie. It's from a standpoint of experience, right? It's
yeah,
like you feel things
yeah.
more when you're watching it with other people.
I actually this is kind of goes into like what Corlandos was asking specifically about like how I got into this. One of my favorite stories in my entire life that ever happened to me was the first time I saw There Will Be Blood. It was in Washington D.C. I think it was Christmas Day, and I remember sitting in theater and the ending of that movie. Spoiler alert! When they're in bowling alley. I remember the audience laughing and me sitting there. I'm like, don't know what's going to happen. I'm like, this isn't funny. Like, why are people laughing? And then he hits him with a bowling pin, and then complete silence. And then on the second hit, he draws back and hits him again, and you hear that thud. And I remember thinking, this is why I want to do this. Like that sudden change in emotion, that level of control that you have over an
I
audience.
mean, look, it's the same thing. Like, I'll
Fascinating.
never forget like the first time I saw the first like 15 minutes of Gladiator in the theater. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
incredible. Or like I was there opening weekend in the theater, a packed movie theater, whatever. Opening weekend for like The Sixth Sense. You know, and so like
Yep.
the level of like the experience of like when everybody around you was at different times like figuring it out. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Some are ahead of you, some are behind you, whatever. Yeah.
That's fun too. Is it's like the
Mhm.
different speeds. Like yeah, that's definitely a highlight for me too. Where you notice. I think as like filmmakers, we kind of almost are like regularly ahead, not in like a derogatory way, but like the idea of like we kind of know the like the tricks of
Right.
the trade, so we're like looking
You know
for
what the
things, and it's
formula
like
should be spitting
very
out,
interesting.
you know.
Yeah, but it's like even with the I think that's like the other thing that's fascinating too is like even with the formula like intact, you kind of are still surprised or like there is room for like for that level of surprise to change, which I think is really awesome.
That's what, and as a filmmaker, you definitely have to do it. But that's what everybody's doing. It's the willful suspension of disbelief. Like when I go into that theater,
Yeah,
I want to take off my logic hat, take off all my detective hat, and just enjoy whatever's about to come. Uh,
yeah,
but you talk about
yeah,
the theater experience of watching cinema. Not only is it more fun, but it also factors into um, the filmmaker's process. Like you think about watching something on your phone versus watching something 16 by 9 on your TV, or watching something that was shot anamorphic. Like it's different. It's a different presentation, and I get to absorb more of the media in that format of a theater
yeah,
with 40-foot, with a 40-foot screen
yeah,
than I do, you know, on my computer.
To
Also, the
that point,
sound,
yeah,
everything is better.
to that point, whatever. It's like
yeah,
hear like executives talk about a lot about like the second screens, whatever, right? Like we need if like especially if like if you're gonna go on a stream or something like that, like they'll say we need something that's gonna you know second screens, whatever, right? So somebody can like have it on while they're on their phone, blah 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 blah, whatever. And it's like
yeah,
executives will talk like that. It's like it's not how like we worked hard for this thing. Like we're trying to tell a story. Every like stuff matters, right? So
yeah,
like even if I go home to Atlanta or whatever, right? And I'm just like watching a movie with my sister. right? Just like I'm like at her house, we're just watching a movie, whatever, and she'll get up and like start doing something. Like I'll pause the movie. I'm like, are you like? I'll wait till you're done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because
I'm like that. I'm like that.
Somebody worked really hard on this one frame of the movie. Somebody worked very extremely hard on it, and you're just gonna miss it.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
I definitely, I'll like, people will get up to go do something, and it's funny too because it's like it doesn't matter how many times. If I'm watching something with friends and like it doesn't matter how many times each of us has seen it. If it's like something where it's like I'm like, oh, this is good, so I'll pause it. Without fail, someone will be like, "Oh, you have to pause it for me." I'm like,
I absolutely do.
I have to.
You know,
it's getting paused. All right, well, check this out. Do you guys remember a handful of years ago, whatever pandemic time, when what was the name of that platform? Quibi. When Quibi, Quibi, something like that, and everything was shot like landscape mode. Yeah,
16
9 by
16.
Yeah.
And
all like quick clips. Like it was like maybe like 2 minutes.
Exactly.
Quick bites.
What's funny,
Quick bites.
fast forward, I know Kevin Hart released his movie Die Hard on that platform, and now it's on Prime as a standard like movie. So, but the funny thing for me was that they had to shoot that movie for secondary screens, but not only for secondary screens, but 9 by 16 primarily with so I'm like, how do you even but that just goes to show you like the delivery method affects the filmmaking. So
it does.
I heard that like also they had like issues with specifically that where they would have some of the shows would shoot 16 by 9 and then in post they would like completely cut off the left and the right margins and then only have this. And then they would have like people would be like, "Why I want to watch this in a different way." Like, sorry,
wow. It's this thing though. Like you hear people in industries talk a lot about like, you know, we've lost the audience. The audience doesn't want to, you know, the kids are on TikTok and blah blah blah, YouTube, whatever.
Ridiculous.
And it's like, no, there was some article I read, whatever, and like somebody had interviewed a bunch of like high school kids, and it was like actually no, like we like movies, like we like going to the movies, like we know when you're being cynical and you're just telling a story to make you buck, whatever. Like if you tell me like a good story, whatever, like I'll go, like I don't care, like you know what I'm saying, like
it's more about the repetition of story, like where it's like, oh, it's less about like trying to challenge an audience and more about what is the audience familiar with that they'll go back to. And that's like where you get like, you get sequel fatigue, you get MCU fatigue, you get just like anything related to what we've seen before. Prequels, that's like legacy prequels or sequels is like out of control. Like even as someone that was like a massive fan of Furiosa, I was very much like, I didn't need that backstory. I'm happy that George Miller is, getting to do what he wants, but now that like people didn't see it, he's not going to get to tell any more of it. And it like bums me out. Cause that's a guy that's like incredibly talented. But yeah, I think that I even as someone that like, I'll we were talking about it before, like I'll go into like old Japanese cinema, like old European cinema, whatever. I also enjoyed most of the MCU movies. And then like once Endgame happened, you come back, you're like, why do I care about any of this still? It was just like they kind of just like invented the wheel and then they were like trying to reinvent it. And it was just like instead of trying to
this is the thing, like one thing that would never not have value is a good story, right? And like but like if you're trying to like repackage something and microwave it, whatever, like that's the thing that where people would start like, and people, the audience is smart, they know when you're doing that, when you're not really putting the effort in, like just doing fan service, just like trying to tap into nostalgia. It's not necessarily something that's like still going to like bring in audiences. You need to like tell them good stories, and wow them with something new that they haven't seen before. Take them on a journey that they, with characters, they don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing is like, what happens next? You know what I'm saying? Like that's
the difference. Right. I think you're describing the difference between show business and storytelling, though. The two are not really the same.
I mean, we're talking about art versus commerce.
I mean, it's like
but like
art versus commerce.
But like
Yeah.
that's the thing though. But here's the thing though about that though is like people tell you like, oh, we're just trying to like this is like the whole thing about talking about like the studio structure, like whether Hollywood has become too leveraged up with like with like private equity and Wall Street and blah 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 whatever, where you have to do a return all the time, like a constantly growing whatever. But like at the same time, it's like if you value your product, if you're putting your heart into the product, whatever, that's the thing that's why people love movies in the first place. That's what built the business, was like people telling like executives who love movies trying to shepherd artists to make the same movies that they love, that they love or want to see, right? And so like that's what feeds the business, that's what builds the business, right? So like the idea of like we're gonna try to game the system somehow, game art, whatever, it doesn't really make much sense. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean it's also like the thing where it's like you kind of get into the idea of like anybody that tells you that they have like the answer is probably wrong.
I mean, it's the old saying,
the answer.
Like,
so like the idea of being like, I know what the magic bullet to make a $1 billion franchise.
Here's the thing: if you make tell a good story, whatever,
no.
guess what? I guarantee you can probably build into $1 billion franchise if it's a good story that you can continue and build on, whatever. You know what I mean? But it's like, like
Hollywood's not a meritocracy, and we know that. So your good story may never get made if you're depending on the powers that be to make it. Just like there might be
you got to just like,
perfect
yourself.
McDonald's burger that hasn't come out yet, and it'll never come out because they're like, no, we got these 6, and this is what we do.
And that's what brings us to this moment, whatever. And it's like, as I say, it was the same thing in the 60s that begat the 1970s, like the artistic boom in cinema in the 1970s, whatever. Same thing the 80s that begat like the indie boom in the 90s, whatever, right? So I think we're in the same. I think it's cyclical, and we're back in that moment where we're in a moment now where like a lot of artists, have like, hey, the studios aren't really, the big apparatus of like how maybe is not serving me anymore. Whatever. Let me go and try to tell my story on my own and see where it lands, or see if I can find an audience, right? And that's what we're trying to do here, right?
Yeah.
I also think that like specifically what you're talking about, like with regards to like the American New Wave. We've said New Wave for every country, but like the American New Wave, New Hollywood movement. The idea there was that like the studios were so focused on what they thought was like a surefire hit, and they were leaving people like Robert Altman, Steven Spielberg, Paul Schrader, Martin Scorsese, De Palma. They were leaving all of them alone, and they came forward and made some of the greatest films of all time. And it's like it goes to show you that like you can always think what people are going to want, but the reality is like what us three are feeling in this exact moment is probably relatable to 75 to 80% of this country, and it's like if someone doesn't want to tell our story, we need to find a way to get it out there so that way we can connect with audiences, and that's going to be the new wave. And usually what happens in every one of those cases is like the indie person becomes the kind of like the mainstream, and then you kind of have to, instead of like going with the mainstream, or not necessarily like saying anything's wrong with mainstream, but you kind of have to like keep challenging yourself to try to like tell different stories. And the idea behind it is humanity and the human condition is so complex. There is no real like straightforward path. You kind of like got to challenge yourself to realize how many different facets of your own humanity there are.
Here's the thing. I think sometimes we don't even know. Steve Jobs is famous for saying he doesn't give people what they want. He's like the consumer doesn't know what they want until I show them. And I didn't know I needed everything everywhere all at once. I didn't know I needed it. But when I saw it, I was like, oh, I appreciate that. Like, oh,
exactly.
And there's a lot of people feel that way about, their things, whatever those things are. But sometimes you just don't know. And that's the thing about artists having the freedom to just go out and create, and to have some type of resource pool that will allow them to do that on a level where their creation can reach other people. And
look, I'm not like, none of us are like insensitive to like, we as filmmakers, just like we're not insensitive to the fact that we would like a return on the thing, right? You know what I mean? So we're not insensitive to that. Like in order for us to do this, we have to put a lot of money on the line in order to like make these
Yeah.
things, right? And so like we don't want to set money on fire. That's not what the purpose is, right? Like we hope to like let's work really hard on making sure we have a really great script and we have a really great cast and we have a really great department heads, creative department heads, whatever. And hopefully like we're just trying to like put everything together in a way that maximizes success in terms of like the story we're telling, right? Like we're not insensitive. We're not trying, like I said, we're not trying to set money on fire. It's just about like, hey, look, we have a story too. We think there might be an audience for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not like these older things. It's like, hey, look, it's just like honestly, it's not like audience will only want this, or audience will only want that. It's like, hey, tell me a good story. I don't care what it is. Tell me a good story. And that will bring me to the theater. Like that will build an audience. It's like, hey, you got a good story, and it's a good story, well told. That's usually enough. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like it's I also think that like in a lot of ways too, it's just like whenever the question does come up, it's like, well, like, yeah, how do you keep yourself engaged with movies? And it's like, I think that like with a lot of cinema, it's just like you kind of have to get past this point where you're like, this is good or bad, or I like this or I don't like this, and think about it more of like the director, the filmmakers in question are trying to tell me something.
Mm-hmm.
What are they trying to communicate? And then you engage with the art, and you take something different out of it. And I think that like that's something that
Didn't like that point, so I just kicked him off. No, I'm just playing. I don't know what happened. He'll jump back in.
Okay.
But I'll let you finish your thought. John. You were saying
man, sorry,
engage with the material rather than just
yeah,
judge it as
I was
good or bad or
saying
binary.
specifically like with I mean this is like the thing with painting, with music, with sculpture, anything. It's like any art, you kind of have to engage with it, and like instead of looking at it like you're like, I enjoy this or I don't enjoy this. If you don't enjoy it, ask yourself why, and then like you figure out you're more in conversation with the art than just like writing it off as like good or bad. And I mean, like, there's plenty of movies that I've watched where I'm like, I hated that. And actually, that's probably anybody who knows me knows that like my barometer is kind of messed up.
But here's the thing, though. Even when there's a movie that I hate, whatever, I'll still like, why did I have such a reaction to that? And I'll watch it a second time to make sure like, did I really not like that? Like, what is it like? Like sometimes I'll like if I've seen a movie in a theater and I hated it, right? And then I was like, let me watch it by myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the experience is just different, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, yo, look, even if you hate something, you're still like you're thinking about it, you're talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are movies that I've seen that I've hated so much that like I had to talk about it. I had to talk about somebody else. I had to make them see the movie so they could hate it as much as I hated it, right? And so we can.
It's funny you say that because I know a specific movie that I still have not seen that you're like, please watch it. I just want to talk to somebody about how much I hate it. I won't say any names.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have that too where it's like I also have the thing where I'll like watch something and I'll be like, I hated that. It made me so angry. And then I'm like constantly thinking about it. And then like
because you have to figure out why. You have to figure out why did that affect me in such a way? Like why I need to be able to like defend.
But so like what I was gonna say like specifically though is like that ends up being why I like it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the a huge part of what we do is we're trying to create emotion. So like if something made me angry and like I ruminate on it and like I think about it and like I process it and then I realize that, oh, that was kind of what the filmmaker's trying to present me with is like a different emotion that maybe I hadn't explored. I think they were successful in their attempt to do that. And I think that's a really interesting thing too, is it's like that's another aspect of art that I don't think enough people discuss it's discussed, but like I don't think the average person goes into something and thinking like, oh, this made me angry. Oh, now I like it. I think it's important to realize that we have a broad spectrum of emotions, and just to write things off as like, oh, this made me happy, it's good. This made me sad, it's bad.
Yeah,
it's like
I mean,
it's derivative.
and this is like the power of cinema too, because like even like I've had that happen to me too before, where it's like sometimes I'll watch a movie and maybe I didn't care for it. I had a visceral negative reaction to it or whatever, right? And I like put it down, and like years later, I'll watch it, and my experience is completely different. I actually like the movie, you know what I mean? And it's happened, and it's actually happened in reverse too, where there's a movie that I liked in the moment, and then years later I watch it. Actually, I'm a different person. You experience more life, more things have happened to you, and so you're bringing something different to your to your position as an audience member when you're watching the film. This is like the power. It's so your reaction to a film is so fluid. That's why it's like we talk about preservation of cinema, right?
Yeah, it's also just like it's a conversation with yourself, like from a different time in your life, which is very interesting. It's like time traveling. It's weird.
That's life. Like that's art, but that's life in general. We don't see art as it is. We see art as we are.
Yeah.
Like I showed up to this conversation with you guys as I am, not necessarily as what you guys are telling me. So everything that I approach, whether it's watching a film, reading a story, arguing with my wife, is I'm approaching it from my vantage point.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, I love movies because we can both, all three of us can go see the same movie and walk out with three different things. You know,
I also like the idea of someone telling me something they really love, and then watching it as a way of trying to. I mean, like Ryan, you kind of touched on it, the idea of like seeing someone's collection and you learn more about the person. But like for instance, I have it. I bought it because Jamari talked about it. I bought Soul Food on DVD, and I was like, I haven't seen that movie probably since I was a teenager. And I'm like, I want to watch it just so I can like, get to know Jamari better outside of how I know her from the production in film school. And I think it's a valuable tool for that too.
So you're saying on the first date, somebody should bring their top 3 films?
Oh man, that's a thing that like I've had happen before. Somebody is like, "What's your favorite movie of all time?" And I'm like, "Is this a serious question? Like, how much time you got?"
I mean, look, it's real though, where it's like, one of my favorite things to do is like if somebody has not seen a film, like I want to introduce and they haven't seen it and they're open to see. I don't want to be obnoxious, like demand they watch it, but like look, it's just like introducing them to a new film that they haven't seen that I think they might like love, right?
Yeah,
that means something to me.
And I feel like definitely demanded that I watch films before.
I mean, but I'm saying like I like to actually watch it with them. Actually, you know what I'm saying? And just like, hey,
you actually put me on the trilogy, the Before Sun.
Before Sun. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
later, yeah.
My controversial take is it's the greatest trilogy of all time.
It's like it's up there. It is up there. It's that and like Lord of the Rings, probably.
Godfather too.
Well, I mean, I have
people get mad at me when I say the Before trilogy. I think for sustaining quality, it's better than the Godfather.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I know it's a controversial take.
No, it's not really that controversial, actually, because like the first 2 are masterpieces, and then the third one was not a masterpiece. But then
third one's like frustrating. It's one of those ones that I'm talking about where I was like, I walked out and I was like, it's kind of disappointing. I'm like, I think that's kind of what he's trying to convey. It's like it's not going to be a storybook ending. Like just because they had this like perfect meeting, this perfect reunion, doesn't mean it's going to be like a smooth ship into the future, which I think is brilliant. That's what Richard Linklater is really good at being like, hey, you know how time functions? This is like everything that you think you know about it in a different way. It's
I mean, the thing I love about it is like the Before Sunrise, the first movie, whatever. It's like they're the early 20s, so they're all idealistic, whatever, about love and everything else, right? You know what I mean? Then you get the second movie 9 years later, and they're in their early to mid 30s, and it's like they're that cynicism has crept in, right?
It hasn't taken over.
Had to take over, but it's there, right? And they're like a little bit dissatisfied, and they're like, whatever. And then you go to before midnight, the third movie, and it's like they're just more pragmatic about everything. It is and is realistic, and we're gonna get in this major fight, whatever. We're not breaking up. Like, come on, what are we talking about here? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's like the just like seeing like the trajectory of those 2 characters over 3 movies. And just kind of seeing how they evolve and grow as people the same way like we all evolve and grow as people. That's the brilliance of those films. You know what I mean? That's why they're so I've shown that movie. Like I remember I was teaching, I was helping to teach a class of beginning filmmaking to some high school students, whatever. This was some years ago, and I was trying to like show them, that the just like being able to communicate something without dialogue in a scene, whatever,
Yeah.
right? How actors can communicate so much without dialogue in a scene, whatever, right? So I showed the scene from Before Sunset, whatever, where like Jesse and Selena are in the car, whatever, and he's telling about how he's in this unhappy marriage, whatever, and like he keeps like dreaming about her and blah blah. And there's a moment where he turns away, right? And he's like Ethan Hawke turns away, he looks out the window, whatever, and then Julie W kind of like reaches out for like a second towards or whatever. So he turns back towards her, he pulls away, right? And I was like, stop, pause. Do you see what she just did right here? You know what I'm saying? Like that is communicating so much in the scene without the dialogue. The scene is not like I always you tell beginning filmmakers, whatever. It's like the scene is not about what the scene's about. You know what I'm saying? Like they're saying dialogue, but there's so much beneath the surface that's not being said. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And he's really so important.
So real quick, so like John, we should talk about like first of all, we should talk
about stuff.
We should talk about like after the movie they were making, like like how you came aboard of this thing, why you came aboard. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of maybe like I want to say like maybe like 2 years ago you sent me the script for The Ashes, which I read and we talked about, and we were like talking about trying to get that off the ground. I think that basically the hard thing about feature films, TV shows is it's a huge monumental task, and you got to raise like a ton of money and put a lot of things in place. And so we when we were talking about that, we were like, well, what about like short films? That's a little bit more in our grasp. I know both you and I have multiple short films written that we have been trying to get off the ground. And so we were talking specifically about like how to get like the most realistic one off the ground in terms of like producibility. And that's how Morning came about to me. And then we started talking about it, and I think you were asking me for, I can't remember if you were asking me if I knew anybody that would like be able to like post produce. And I was like, well, I mean, like that's kind of what I do with my day-to-day job. And I mean, I edit on the regular. I think at the time I was like editing like another short film, or I had worked on a feature film a year and a half ago, and I think that's what I was doing. And then that's how it kind of started happening.
Yeah, I think I asked you for like some editor recommendations, whatever.
Yeah,
just because I didn't know like if you wanted to do it or not. Like I'm always like,
yeah,
you might want to do this.
I think that's what ends up happening, especially for someone like me, because like I mean, like Corlandos, you introduced me as like producer editor, but the reality is like this is kind of like something you do in filmmaking, is like you start learning all these positions as more or less like a better way to communicate with people. So I'm a writer, I'm a director, I'm a producer, I've shot things, done VFX on things, I've done sound design on things. It's just like and then you kind of like take something that you're good at and you turn it into, a way to make money, and while you're prepping other projects. And that's kind of how I became an editor. And then you, as a filmmaker, you realize that like you learn so much more about the process when you're putting the final product together. It's like, it's really hard to describe, but like when you're working on a feature film, and like everything you think kind of almost flies out the window when you're actually in the room putting it together, and you realize that like there's a lot of thinking on the fly. And so I started doing that. And then like when we talked about it, I was like, yeah, I would love to do that. I think that when you're learning how to be a better filmmaker, you realize that you're only as good as your collaborators. So like I was really interested in like forming collaborations with people that I knew I could trust, and that I would be happy to see what the end product was. And that's kind of like how we started talking about it. And then it's like as time's gone on, I've been like so invested in like making sure it happens, that like that's kind of how I got the producer role. And I think that's that's really what it's about, is like trying to be there as a creative. It's like really hard to kind of find people where you're gonna like they're gonna be following through with you. And I keep telling Ryan, it's like I know that's a really hard thing to come across, so I'm gonna try to be that for you. And yeah, so that's ultimately how I came to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we say like we also like we go like way back, like we go back to like grad school at USC, like what I'm saying, we've been friends, since then, since like we're both working in the student production office.
Before that,
Yeah,
you were coming in, and I mean, like I can tell you, I
yeah,
remember like earlier conversations talking about Kendrick Lamar, and me
yeah.
being like a doubter, and you be like, no, you need to listen to
Section 80, the Section 80 just came out, and
like,
I became
yeah, and I was like,
like,
I think that's like one of the things you also love about like fellow hip hop heads. You realize that like you all come at it from such a different place, and like you all care, like you probably care too much about it.
yeah.
And then like you start getting these arguments, and yeah, that one was like a specific one. And then after that, I took over as the lead in the student production office, and I was like without fail, Ryan's the first person I'm hiring. I don't even need to interview
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And, and that's how it happens, man. And like, so like, we've always talked about years, but like trying like to do stuff,
Yeah,
and like just be from the standpoint of like me, kind of trying to like make stuff happen at a, within like the Hollywood apparatus, whatever. And it took me a long time to come to the idea of like I got to do this and do it completely independently. It took me a long
yeah.
time.
I wouldn't even say like completely independently, but it's like you realize that like no one's going to come to your door with like $1 million and be like, make me what's on your mind. So you got to like just start putting things
Well, I think
out.
people were telling me that initially.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like they're telling you that it's not happening.
Yeah.
You realize that like as an artist, you kind of have to like find a way.
Yeah.
And from your, it's funny that I just said that. Made me think of one of your favorite movies,
My favorite movie.
Jurassic
Yeah.
Park. Life finds a way. It's like
Exactly.
you make it happen. And I think that one of the best things about creativity is it's like you will, in some ways, if you don't have the resources, you'll find a way to make it happen. And sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised by what you end up with. So
Yeah, man. At the end of the way, you make a way. You know what I'm saying? So it's
yeah,
like that's kind of how this came about. It's like okay, it's like nah. Like I was chasing Hollywood
yeah,
because for a second, like Hollywood's kind of like and I'm still got a toe in whatever. I've had a toe in whatever, but it's like the things I want to do. It took I haven't been able to get. I think I kept hitting up against like a certain ceiling in terms of like like I was almost there, almost there, almost there, whatever. But one way or another, something just we couldn't get over the finish line, whatever. And so like it was like a repeated thing where it's like this might go, this might go, this might go, and then it just kept bumping up against something, right? And so then it came down to like I really want to get back to basics. And so that means like we're gonna make this film, whatever. And so like I just want to get people that I liked, who I knew were talented. We should say that John, like he edited our excellent pitch video. He put that together. You know what I'm saying? Like,
wow, but I did.
yeah. But like when I saw it, I was like, this is a freaking masterpiece. Like, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like actually I will say like one of the fun things about editing is it's like you'll be going through it and like figuring out, you're like, I don't think I have anything, and then like something clicks, and then like you put it there and you're like, I think this is pretty good, and then you show it to other people and they're like, yes, pretty good, and then you kind of like just go in that direction, and that's kind of what happened to that one.
Yeah. So, and could you just like tell just talk about a little bit like what drew you, because like we could, even if you like asked you and like I told you like and like you just said like, no, I actually don't have time to do work on this, whatever, you know what I'm saying, we still have been friends, you know what I'm saying. Yeah. So like why what drew you to morning, like what about it did you connect with, and
I think initially, well, yeah, I mean like the base level friendship between us, like I value the creative input you put into things. I would say when you did send me the script for morning, you also sent me the short script for another thing, and so it's like you get to see the variety in like perspective from someone that you want to collaborate with. So that's like a valuable element to it. But I would say with Morning specifically, there's something very like, this is gonna sound like, I don't know, like smaller than what I want it to seem. There's something very human about it, where it's like it is so realistic, and like you see the like um, you see characters that you may or may not be familiar with. It's like almost like it's very relatable, and so like for me, it was like I want to see this get made because I think there's value to it in beyond just being like a very personal story for you, which is like, you know, it was enough for me to come on board. But like I think when you start, um, you see how the characters function in that world at that moment of time, the emotions that they're dealing with, and you're like, I would like to see this on the screen. And yeah, so I reading the script was like very transformative for me to be like, yeah, I would like to get behind this and see it get made, and I could see it holding weight with audiences and having an impact beyond just a traditional, you know, throwaway project that you might come across.
Mm.
Not to say that most projects are throwaway, but there you do when you work in the entertainment industry, you work on a lot of things where you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here for it. But yeah. But yeah, I also think the other thing too is, without giving too much away, like the you know, magical realist elements, and that's something that I really love in filmmaking. Like, you know, I love Guillermo del Toro's work, and I think that like you have elements of like his method of filmmaking and like things that are, they seem out of left field, but the reality is like our imaginations are, you know, how we deal with like the traumas that we experience in our day-to-day lives, and I see that in it, so I appreciate that, and I would like to be able to see that come true.
Yes.
Man, well, if you're watching or listening and you also want to see this come true, there's only one thing you got to do, and that's help us get over the finish line. Ryan, how can people jump in and support and help us finish getting Morning to the public?
All I can say is like we have an Indiegogo. There should be a link to it. Hopefully below where you really
No,
ever
no.
listen to the podcast. But please go to our Indiegogo and donate. You know, we have a long way to go. So like any little bit helps. So just like why listen to Pipe. If you connect with this at all, if you want to help see this film, please be a part of it. Please put in whatever you can. Even $10 helps. You know what I mean? So like anything you can put in, great. Share it. Tell your friends about what we're doing. Ask them to donate. Like just have publishing spread so we can like get this thing over the finish line and make a good film, which is all we really want to do, and we think it's going to be a great film. So we have the Indiegogo that's going. If you want, we're also fiscally sponsored through Film Independent. So if you want to go to Film Independent's website and donate there, donations through Film Independent are tax deductible. So that's an added benefit for people who donate there. You know what I mean? We also have, let's say, we also have perks on Indiegogo for people who donate. So like, you know, please, 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 don't just like the video. You know, don't just like, you know, please like put your money where your mouth is. Please donate. Please put something in. Please be a part of this community, whatever. You know, and share with as many people you can. And ask them to do the same. And we have a Substack, 22 Booker Substack. Follow us on Instagram at 22booker.ent. You know, where else? Blue Sky, we're there too. You know,
All the things, the
All the
Grams,
things.
LinkedIn,
yeah,
Sky,
yeah.
all of
So
it.
you know, follow me at Ryan T Lipscomb. You know, I'm on Instagram under that Ryan T Lipscomb. You can find me there. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
For sure. John, if people want to follow you or see more about what you're doing, what you have going on, is there any way to do that? Or
Oh man. Yeah, I have Instagram is pretty much what I use. It's at Conway_East. Uh, it's a very old username, but yeah, I think on there I haven't posted anything in a while, mostly just because I've been like, I think that like I would like to post more. It's just like all of my stuff is very like I like posting like more artistic things. So if you're interested in
Hey,
that,
hey.
follow me. But
Yeah,
Well,
and I
listen.
just want to say we cannot unless you donate, we
yeah,
cannot make this film. So please
that's
donate
what I will say. I will
so we
say
can make
the most
this film.
important thing for an independent film is finding an audience, and if we find an audience that wants to help us get it made, that's crucial, and we would be incredibly thankful.
If you donate, I promise you, you will not regret it. It will be a good movie, and you would have been a part of it, helping get it done. That's all I'm going to say. I'm done. All right, please donate. Thank you.
Echo that. Everything he just said. So listen, stay tuned for our next episodes. We're going to have some other members of the team on, and we're also going to be bringing members of the cast on. In case you didn't know, spoiler alert, we've already cast the project. So we have some really, really, really talented people in front of the
Yeah,
camera. And I can't wait for you to
great.
meet them. Make sure you lock in, follow us, stay tuned to the next episode. All right, see you guys soon.
All right, thank you.